what we're going to do today, and I'm going to share my screen at some point. What we're going to do today is really talk about the things that we've been doing, the services, so the researcher access service, and how we're developing that. And Hugh will talk to us about that, the work that we're doing around data, bringing data together and programs around that. Nora will talk there on synthetic data. Lynne is going to say something about what we're doing in that space, and Duncan will talk at the end very briefly about what we're doing on equalities data. And there's all of these sessions will have an interactive element, but if there are things that aren't covered in that, we'll just have a little space at the end for Q&A. We've made this a shorter session, so it's an hour long today, and then we'll see where we go. But just up front, I suspect most of you will have seen this before, but the vision of the organization is around improving health and social well-being, and really by doing that in a few ways, by organizing the data that we have about people, places and businesses in Scotland, and working with partner organizations to improve access to that data for research in the public good. And really it's about creating those conditions where data can be used for changing decisions and changing the way that services are delivered, that means that people's lives are improved. And so I just wanted to say one thing just before we get into the main meat of the conversation, which is just a little bit about where we are in terms of our development. So Research Data Scotland's been around actually as a company, and I say a company, it's a charity for a year, owned by government, Public Health Scotland, and now a range of Scottish universities. And this is the organizational structure. So we've got, I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but we've got a team led by Alan Johnson on the very left there that's about the organization, so organizing our board and our finances and things like that. Hugh leads a team that's a digital team that's about the transformation and supporting the transformation and improvement to the process of accessing data. That we've got a communications and partnership and strategy team that Layla Robinson, who joined us earlier on this month, is leading, and then we've got a data team that Nora Cooke's our director of, and Lynne, who we'll hear from later on, sits within that team. So, and we're now up to around 20 people, almost 20 people, and we're pretty much there in terms of bringing people in. We've had an awful lot of new people over the last 3 months, but we've got a couple of posts on sort of content design that are out at the moment, but pretty much there. And we published earlier on during this month, and at some point I'll get around to putting this in the chat, the links to our strategy document and our 2022-23 business plan. And as a sort of link to that, we've now got our grant agreement for the current year signed off with Scottish Government, who are the main funders for Research Data Scotland. And so that was a real achievement, and signalled in that business plan, and I think I might have presented this before, that our organisational priority number one in that is how do we improve the speed and efficiency of access to researchers whilst maintaining the trustworthiness and the security and the way that our reputation in Scotland for correct data handling, whilst at the same time broadening the range of data that's made available. So that's our focus, and with that, I'm going to finish what I'm saying and introduce Hugh Wallace, our new, as of the beginning of August, Chief Information Officer. you.
Thank you, Roger. I shall just attempt to share my screen. Hopefully, people are able to see. So just give me a second here. I do love my technical challenges. Right, this should hopefully do it this time. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen? Great, thank you. I saw thumbs up. So let me just turn that to slideshow mode. So thanks to Roger. As Roger said, I am the new Chief Information Officer within Research Data Scotland. And one of the main kind of focuses that we've had over the last few months, but kind of gathering pace in the last 2-3 months, has been the development of a roadmap for our researcher access service. And that's effectively what we're calling the name of the programme of work, which describes how researchers will be able to apply for and access data sets via Research Data Scotland. We've talked in previous user forums about our journey to date and how it is kind of advanced over the course of 2021. So we've undertaken a number of different bits of project work, which have informed where we've got to date. That's included a discovery phase, which included taking a sort of wide view across the landscape to look at all the different ways and means that it's possible to access research data in Scotland. It's included developing a prototype service, and it's meant that there have been a number of outputs delivered, which have helped kind of visualize where we're trying to get to when it comes to the delivery of a service on behalf of Research Data Scotland. But essentially, it's been about building a case for change, and to kind of bring us kind of up to speed about why there's the need for change. These speech bubbles are kind of quotes and synthesis of some of the user research and business analysis that was done in those early stages, which reflect some of the system-wide challenges that there are when it comes to the accessing of data and the ways in which people are able to either apply for or access data, but also when it comes to the actual service provision, how are internal users able to kind of use the systems and processes to enable them. So just to read one of these out, common frustrations and problems exist for the researchers and service providers with a lack of visibility of overall project status, ultimately creating multiple points of service failure, time delay, and frustration. So a lot of what's been done is kind of to point out sort of pain points and areas for improvement. That's not to say that there aren't already well-established services which are delivering very well across the country, but there's a sense that there are some common problems and frustrations across the board that are kind of really ripe for change. So when it comes to the Researcher Access Service, we've kind of been working on a statement to encapsulate really what it's looking to do. So the aim of the Researcher Access Service is to make it faster and simpler to access data, and that's securely from end to end with an improved experience for all users. And that's to support research and the public good. I guess to kind of go back to Roger's point, faster and simpler, looking for efficiency savings, the kind of really measurable things that we're trying to put in place in order to make sure that we're aware that we're hopefully achieving the vision and delivering things that are actually improving the system overall. It's quite a lot of words in this page. I hope people are able to read it, but we're looking to achieve this by maximizing the use and reuse of data acquired and stored within a secure data holding with a consistent approach to linking data sets. We want to build access to a portfolio of data assets around people, places, and businesses that are held securely and accessible at pace. We're going to be developing a single digital solution to help manage interactions with applicants and potential applicants, build partnership relationships, and streamline processes. We're looking to create a service model where the pathway to data for research and the public good is proportionate to the risk of access. And we want to improve the guidance and data discovery offering to better support researchers and research applications. We've been working with a simplified service map, which shows what we think are the 6 stages of the researcher access service. And that's helped us to think about the different tasks and work packages necessary to design the service. It's allowed our team to consider the service from a researcher and an internal user perspective, and to highlight the different co-design tasks that will be required at each stage. So the process to discover, inquire, apply, get approval, achieve access, and then deliver outputs is kind of these are the 6 stages that we see. I think it's important to say that this isn't meant to represent a linear journey. We understand that people will kind of pop in and pop out at various stages, that there are some feedback loops within this process, but it's really just to kind of allow us to think about the design and the overall approach that we're going to take to development. We'll be delivering our service iteratively. So this isn't about, you know, a big bang putting a platform in place. We want to introduce different features and new elements stage by stage. And we want to make improvements as we understand how people use the service. So certain features aren't proving to be as effective as we hope they would be. A test and learn approach will allow us to make changes and optimize that for all users. And we've broken the roadmap into a series of work packages, which are essentially smaller project chunks that will help inform the build towards subsequent phases. There's quite a lot of detail on this particular screen. We're in phase 1 of activity effectively, and looking really for the rest of this financial year, although that's a kind of slightly artificial divide, to put a package of work together that will help deliver an end-to-end minimum viable product of a fast-track service, a fast-track application process next year. So we're redesigning our website, we're looking at the advice and guidance, we'll be making improvements to our metadata catalog, we'll be looking at the data holding requirements in terms of how researchers are able to access data that is RDS, that is applied for via RDS. We'll be doing a full technology appraisal and a prototype application all in the next 6 months or so, and that's going to help inform the future phases as they develop. So in terms of kind of tangible next steps, we're going to be working with a digital supplier to put all this together, and that hopefully will be in place by late October, early November. We're going to be undertaking lots of deep dive activity to help us plan and prioritize the different tasks that need to be put in place, particularly with a focus on those work packages in the early stages, to make sure that we've got the right level of interaction between the different partners that we're working with. And there's going to be ongoing work that will support and influence the shape of the service. That will include information governance work, the development of a public engagement strategy, and a user testing group. And the final word in terms of the user testing group, so we're looking to establish a pool of researchers to help us test and evaluate features, content, and functionality of the service as it develops. So that's part of our agile approach. It means we're continuously going to be prioritizing the needs of end users. We'll be looking at different styles of testing sessions. There might be some paper prototyping. There's likely to be some screen-based prototyping, but that'll help us gain feedback and insight. And there'll be a communication of this group and a sign-up process to follow. So with that, I will say thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. And so just wanted to pause there before we move on to Nora and see if there are any questions immediately for Hugh on what he said. And I'm just checking Neha, yeah, you can raise you can ask a question if you want to type it, but you can also raise your hand and then ask the question directly if you'd like to do that. So maybe just give people another 5 seconds to do that. But then we've got a little bit of space of time at the end. So I can't see anything immediately coming through. So we'll move on to.
We do have a question. Sorry, Roger, to interrupt. We do have a question from, is it Jess Butler? Do you want to, let me see. Can I allow you to talk? Does that help?
I think so. Yeah.
Hi, Jess.
Hi. So super basic question. I wonder if you could just chat about how RDS relates to Idris. Like, do you guys streamline application to access the trusted research environments we already have? Do you run the output services from these services?
Well, I can pick up on that. There may be representatives from Idris on the call as well. And actually, we actually had a very informative session with the entire Idris team just on Monday there. So effectively, RDS and Idris are going to be jointly developing this program. So a lot of the services that we're going to be kind of operationalizing in terms of a digital front end and some of the kind of improvements when it comes to the notification of people as the process goes through is going to be done and delivered between the RDS and the Idris teams. So in some cases that will be putting a sort of digital front door. In other cases we'll be looking at sort of more sort of process improvements and streamlining of existing processes.
And does it apply, will that front end apply to non-health data as well? So say census data?
Yes, so the kind of the full vision effectively of the service is to look at all types of data. I think the initial phases in terms of what we prototype, it may be that we look just at health data sets, but that's effectively an evolving picture and something that's going to be developed over time. But yes, the intention is very much to offer access to different types of data set.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Jess. And actually, that kind of last question that you've got maybe takes us nicely into the next session around data. Nora, can I invite you to pick things up?
Yeah, so I'm famously terrible at sharing my screen on Zoom, so I apologize. let me try and see how we get on. Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So to talk, I mean, Hugh has spoken here about the work that he's doing on the sort of researcher access service, but obviously the sort of whole point of that is researchers are accessing data. So we've sort of broken things down in terms of having the data team and the digital team, just sort of for simplicity in terms of sort of getting tasks done. But obviously the work that we're doing is very interlinked. So we are working together closely on all of these areas of work. So we are then sort of thinking about, apologies, have my slides moved on with me there? Yeah, lovely. So in terms of kind of what we're doing really is making sure that data then is available via the researcher access service. Not that it's just sort of it would be no point in it if there was no data in it at the end of it. So just going to talk through today some of the things around sort of the data sets that we're talking about initially, and the data sets that we might be focusing on in future, data discovery, and some things around data curation and synthetic data. And there's already been a question about that. So in the first instance, we're taking quite a pragmatic and iterative approach. So we're working very much in the first instance with things that already exist. So making sure we've got the data sets that exist within the COVID-19 data holding and data sets that exist within the ADR Scotland holding. So we're working with data controllers to make sure that there is access to those data sets that already exist. And then and working with the kind of the pre-existing expertise that exists and commissioning those services. And then taking it kind of incrementally from from there. So the sorts of things we're working very closely with ADR Scotland, who are currently sort of bringing in new data sets. And then we're thinking about what the data sets down the line might look like. So additional health data sets that are commonly requested are things like GP data, national labs, other data sets within IDRIS. And obviously that's a fairly mixed bag of things that I've talked about there. Some things that data sets that are already within IDRIS are kind of easier and more short-term kind of ambitions, where things like GP data and national labs data, there's quite a lot of work that needs to happen in order to make those kind of available for, bring them into one place, make them available for research, and then allow access to them. And we're also involved in conversations thinking about, as I just showed on the previous slide, we've got the COVID data holding, we have the ADRS holding, and thinking about in the future, what would data holdings look like in the future? Do we want to continue having two separate holdings? Would we be looking at iterating holdings? And just being involved in conversations like that will be good sort of for the system as a whole. Obviously, we have our data discovery. We've got a metadata catalogue that exists already with all the data sets that sit in the COVID holding and in the ADR Scotland platform. And we will look at how we iterate this over time and making sure that the data is findable and that this data catalogue is useful as well for everybody, and that it syncs in with other data catalogues that already exist with HDR UK, for example, and across the whole system. Synthetic data then is an area that we started to work on, and Lynne will be talking a bit about this later on. This is something that there's a lot of interest on at the minute, and it's in fairly early stages. Some organisations are further along than others, but there is a lot of question came up as to sort of what data, what synthetic data will we make available, and how will we put it in the metadata catalogue. All of those things still have to be determined. So there's obviously, we're setting up a working group to get data controllers together across Scotland and also linking in across the UK to start to answer some of those questions. So obviously sort of high fidelity data sets are probably more useful, well, depending on what you want to do, but there are more information governance concerns around those. So there will be a trade-off between sort of utility versus IG safety and questions like that. So these are things that we want to kind of bring a group of people together to try and understand all of those issues and understand some of the concerns with data controllers, but also with the general public as to what where those concerns might lie and how we can address those over the longer term. We're also looking at we're providing support to some partners who are looking at different tools that are used to undertake synthetic data analysis. We also are sort of working with a group of what we're calling, I suppose, demonstrator projects, which are data sets, sort of bringing data sets together that don't currently, that aren't necessarily used for research at the minute, but bringing data sets together to take an example. We're going to talk about a few of these here. I'll talk briefly about the business data, and Duncan will speak briefly about the equalities research data set later on. But one of the things that we're doing is, lots of different researchers and data controllers are trying to bring data sets together for research purposes, and each time they do that they learn lessons and they try to share those lessons. But we're really trying to come up with a framework for these demonstrator programs to make sure that actually these learnings are kind of systemically learned across the system rather than certain organizations learning the lessons, and making sure that happens. I mean, it happens already to a certain extent, but really kind of embedding that in the way that we work as a system. So to talk briefly about, this is David Jack is leading on this piece of work, working with ONS and Scottish Government to link business data, data about businesses, and rates data. And the initial intention had been to also link in HMRC data, but as I said, in terms of working with an iterative approach, in the first instance, the HMRC data was out of scope. So we're working on linking the rest of the data for now within the Secure Research Service, and then over time we will migrate that to the Integrated Data Service of ONS as that becomes DAA accredited, and hopefully over the longer term introduce HMRC data, and all the while thinking about what the utility of that is in terms of research over the longer term. I suppose I've talked about a lot of different things here, and we've said kind of in our strategy, as Roger already alluded to, that we want to be user-led in how we develop new services and data offerings. So in terms of the digital services that Hugh mentioned earlier on, we will be looking for user input into all of that work. And when we talk about users, I suppose we've sort of got a mix of people on the call today. I think we've got colleagues from partner organisations who will be partly involved in as Idris and NRS and others who will be partly involved in the delivery of this, but also researchers who are going to be using the data and accessing the services. So we're looking at ways that we can use the user, kind of bring in user voice into everything that we're doing, and make sure that the data sets that we're talking about sourcing in the future are the ones that are usable, and thinking about the reuse of existing data sets as well as the synthetic data. So that's all I have to say. There will be, as I said, both Lynne and Duncan will be talking about some of the briefly about some of the areas that they're working on. So I'll stop sharing my screen and take any questions.
I can't see anybody with their hands up or specific questions that come in, apart from one from Martin on synthetic data. You touched upon this briefly, Nora. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you wanted to follow up on that, about the availability of synthetic data and kind of where we're likely to go with it?
Yeah, so I think it's a question for now. I think we will be starting with some demonstrator projects on synthetic data sets as well, and there are conversations ongoing with other data controllers as to which data sets might be appropriate to synthesize and make available, and how we wish to do that. And Lynne will also be talking, well, I won't, she'll be talking about the user group that we're going to have later in the year to start to have some conversations about the which data sets we synthesize and where the concern is in terms of data controllers and privacy and all those sorts of things. So yeah, but in the first instance, we'll be exploring all of that.
Great. And then there's another question that's coming from Ailey. Ailey was asking, yeah, could you say something about the data that we're sort of going after, it kind of refer to? And I think, Ailey, you specifically mentioned the census, but sort of recognizing that some data might not refer to living individuals. So I guess that's census from or some of the other records from quite a while ago. I mean, I'm sort of conscious there's the Digitising Scotland programme that has a lot of historic data, but most of the data that exists in electronic form that we've talked about previously relates to living individuals in the main. Nora, is there anything that you wanted to say about that? I can come in briefly on the back of that if it'd be helpful.
Well, I think just to say, as I sort of said at the beginning, we are starting with what already exists in terms of the data that is there, just to get our kind of minimal sort of viable product up and running. And we say that, and we've had quite a lot of discussion about that. A lot of these services do already exist, and it's kind of introducing a new layer on top to sort of streamline the process. But in the first instance, we're talking about the data sets that exist within the COVID holding and within the ADR Scotland holding, and then we will look to introduce new data sets within that. And there will be far more data sets that we want to bring in than we have resource to bring in immediately. So we will also be looking for input on which are the most useful data sets, which ones do we want quickest, and trying to bring in the ones that will kind of have the most efficiencies as we bring them in.
And those data sets that are already in the National Safe Haven, as you've described it, are available you can find out what those data sets are through findresearchdata.scot website, and we'll put that because that's the link to the data catalogue that was mentioned earlier on, and we'll put the link to that in the chat. One more question is from Celia, and she was looking for you to say a little bit more about the demonstrator projects. So how will we develop them? How will they be funded? Who's going to select the topics for those things?
Mm-hmm. Well, Yeah, so some of it are kind of projects that are already in train, but we will be looking kind of as we go on about which other projects we want to fund. We have a system development fund at the minute, and we'll be looking to expand that as well to support things that are in the kind of strategic are helping RDS to kind of meet our strategic objectives, but having conversations as well about promoting data sets that already exist, as you know, in the ADRS holding. Where can we promote additional research using those data sets and others? So we will be developing that, and we will come back to you as we have those plans more further developed.
Great. And then there's two more questions. So one from Ian, which is about the level of detail that's available on the data sets, and how might we find out that level of detail. Well, I mean, I'll just sort of mention again the data catalog that exists. That certainly for some of the data sets that are there, it shows the level of the variables that are contained in each of the data sets. So I think that should answer the question you've got about the geographic detail and the detail over time as well, Ian. And then final question that we've got here from Jess. Is, as new data sets come in, how will individuals be linked in the absence of a common key? I'm happy to say something about that, but I'm happy for you to, Nora, first of all.
Well, so I think that there is at present, I mean, certainly the data sets that sit in the ADRS holding are they're linkable, so they have the key that's been added into those, and the data sets that sit in the COVID holding also are already chi-seeded or have been. So there will have to be work in order to, so those two currently do sit in two separate holdings, but they have a common key, so to speak, but there is work to be done to see how they would speak to each other. Yeah,
and we'll be working with our partners on exactly that over the coming period. But the aim is to for all the data sets that we bring in to develop a common pseudonymized key that our colleagues in National Records of Scotland are expert in sort of piecing up people, making the links between people coming from different administrative systems, and so I think that's going to be our approach, is to be able to link around a person, place, or business, and between those different things as well. So that's exactly our approach, Jess. Well, hopefully a big weight off researchers. That would be really good. So, okay, I can't see any more questions or hands up. So let's move on. And we talked about synthetic data just in Nora's talk and in the questions there, but we want to make this real. And so Lynne's going to be talking to us just very briefly about how we're going to do that.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my slides?
We can see the notes that you've got, so you might just need to go to the display settings.
Okay, I'll just do that again. Oh, no, hang on, I can't see them. I can't actually see display settings on my screen at the moment. Oh, I might just have to do it with my notes then. I apologize. Try again. Okay. Right. Okay. So you just have to manage with what we've got here. So really, I'm just here to talk about a bit of publicity for our synthetic data user forum. which is going to be on the 22nd of November at 2 p.m. Via Zoom. So at RDS, we've been doing some work scoping the synthetic data landscape in Scotland and beyond. And we've developed a synthetic data strategy, looking at how we can use synthetic data to help improve and speed up access to data. So if you're a researcher who is interested in using synthetic data, or maybe you don't know anything about synthetic data, but actually you would like to access admin data and want to maybe know a bit more about it, right, how data access can be improved, then come along to our forum, share your thoughts, and also find out a bit more about what we're doing, and help us basically develop our synthetic data sets that best fit user needs. So in terms of what we mean by synthetic data, that's a new copy of a data set that's generated at random, but is now made to follow the structure and some of the patterns of the original data set. So as Nora's already mentioned, we have a number of plans around synthetic data. So we plan to set up a Scottish working group to look at synthetic data needs, governance and access requirements throughout Scotland. We want to speak to researchers around their synthetic data requirements, hence we're going with our synthetic data user forum to get feedback on this. Our future plans include talking to data controllers and to the public to get their understanding of and concerns around synthetic data. And we're planning to do some further work looking at synthetic data tools, and we want to develop some example synthetic data sets. So in terms of the user forum, the type of feedback that we're looking for really is around what people would like to use synthetic data for, or indeed if you've already used synthetic data, what you've used it for and how useful you found that. So we have a number of ideas of where synthetic data might be useful. Think about perhaps for training purposes. Admin public sector data can be very messy. So we could use synthetic data to upskill researchers in using this. Potentially it could also be useful around data discovery, with potentially using it to augment the metadata catalogue. We could also consider using it more later on in the kind of project pathway, perhaps for code development, potentially for writing and testing code before full data access is available, or perhaps for limiting safe setting access to the real data with initially running your code on the synthetic data. And a fourth use would be around AI and model training. We're also really interested in the data sets that people would like to have synthesized. We obviously want to think about prioritizing our synthetic data set generation. So we would like to also generate what people are most interested in. We have to think about, there was a question I think on the chat about this, about what access methods people would like to use around synthetic data. And this obviously might depend on whether the data set is available for data discovery and where it perhaps would sit more publicly, or if it's been used more for code development, would we think about having that sitting within a safe setting, or and if so, how useful would that be for people? So I think these are all issues that we still have to kind of work through, and it'd be interesting to get people's feedback on. And we also want some feedback on what people think are the issues around synthetic data. Again, I think Nora's covered some of these that we're considering around privacy controls of privacy concerns of the public and the data controllers, the information governance challenges on trying to release high fidelity synthetic data that looks quite like the real thing, and also issues around the disclosure risks. I mean, how do we measure how closely the synthetic data resembles the real thing? So as I say, we've still got lots of issues to work through around synthetic data, and we would really like researcher feedback on our plans, and for you to come along and share your thoughts. And we'll be a very interactive session, and we'll be sending around Zoom instructions very shortly. I think that's everything from me.
Thanks very much, Lynn, and it'll be a good event. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Is there any, I can't see any sort of follow-up questions. We've had a bit of a discussion on synthetic data already. So with that in mind, I suggest if anybody has got any thoughts after today, that they just get in touch with Lynn as they're signing up to the user event in November. And we'll move on to our final item for today, which is around equalities data. Now, if you have had the opportunity to read the Research Data Scotland strategy, you'll see that we're based upon a set of 7 principles of how we work. And the first one being that Research Data Scotland will only enable access data for research that's in the public good and considers equalities. And so equalities are pretty central to what we're doing and how we've been set up by the Scottish Government. And so this is sort of bringing together and use an equalities data set for research from the administrative and census data that we have is a really key project as far as I'm concerned. And Duncan's here to talk to us about how that's going.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, I'm just going to give a quick update because this is still work in progress. I just wanted to flag this up at this stage. It's a piece of work that's been delivered across our partner organisations for over a good part of a year now. I personally don't take huge credit in some of the work that's been done over that period, but the project is it's entitled the Protected Characteristics Data Linkage Project. So it's attempting to create a data resource, which is a population-wide reference file of protected characteristics as defined under the Equalities Act, that will allow public sector organisations and researchers to link their data to this resource to analyse equality of access, uptake, and outcome of services. So it's potentially a very valuable data set. The data has been assembled by linking across a number of census and other administrative data sets, principally from NHS and schools data at this stage. It's not been possible to map directly to all the 9 protected characteristics exactly. So, but variables that are being assembled are around ethnicity, religion, nationality, age, sex, marital status, disability status, and pregnancy and maternity. So it's as I say, it's a project that's still being worked on across partner organisations. It's in the proof of concept testing phase at the moment. So until that's complete, it doesn't have permission for more wider use, but we're hoping in the next few months that we'll get the approvals for that. So and we'll be able to put some more information on the data catalogue soon as well about the data set. But if anyone is interested in this resource for their own research or would like to find out a bit more about it, then I would suggest just get in touch with us here at RDS. We'll try and help. But happy to take any questions in the meantime.
Has anybody got anything that they wanted to report with Duncan on this project? I can't see any hands or any questions at the moment, so perhaps leave it there. But in more broadly, is there, reflecting upon what you've heard from Hugh about how we're developing this researcher access service, building upon and iterating from the IDRIS service, and from what you heard from Nora about what we're doing to widen the range of data that's available for research, and then from Lynne on synthetic data and Duncan on equalities. Are there things that anybody wanted to use this time to pick up with them or with me about the way that we're developing things in Research Data Scotland? No question is too basic for us, so feel free to ask anything. I'll give you another 20 seconds or so to either put your hand up or to put things in the chat, and feel free if you don't fancy asking something today, or something occurs to you afterwards, to get in touch with us. A general email address is sort of first name dot surname at researchdata.scot, and so feel free to follow up with us afterwards. The final thing, therefore, that I'll say here is we've tried to give a flavour of some of the important things that we're doing, and hopefully that's met those objectives, and you've got something useful from the session. What we're going to do afterwards, just to make sure that we make these sessions as useful as possible, is to drop you a wee email with a couple of questions on it, just to get your feedback on whether this is a particularly useful session, or whether there's more useful ways that we can spend our time. So yeah, if you're able to share anything with us on that, then that would be fantastic. But for now, thank you very much for your interest in what we're doing and for coming along and taking the time out this afternoon. We've actually finished 10 minutes early, or in fact 12 minutes early, so there a little gift to you just for this afternoon. Use it well, and we'll catch up with you very soon. All right, take care everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.